But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win. We choose to go to the moon.
All right, welcome everyone to Super Happy Dragon Lucky episode 0x49. It's the 74th episode. And this week, number go up, a special segment sponsored by FOMO Hunt. We're going to talk about Ethereum this week. So last week, number go up, pretty obviously, pretty big news, right? The analyst forecast, number go up. And by the way, I think that's probably a pretty long-term analyst forecast, hopefully anyway, but either way, good stuff. I have a feeling Ethereum is going to have a good year in 2021. So let's all hope. Next up, something to update everyone about DEN. Of course, DEN recently launched a lot of different features and of course has been spun off from Dragonchain, but near and dear to our hearts, all denizens should be prepared for a new layer creation process that will be the first official non-beta LCP, wherein you will be able to vote with lore and actually receive lot ownership of the new layers. So new community layers, and we have probably I would say, I've not been keeping count the past few days, but we probably have over 20, probably a lot more than 20 now proposals. So right now we're accepting all the proposals. There will be some criteria for acceptance, of course, defined, but this is kind of early round where we want to get people the opportunity to make the proposals with enough time to really think them through and to organize into groups and whatever you want to do to build that community early. They will be selected. The voting process we expect right now to be launched and available sometime in January. I'm hoping second week, but I've told the team, even if we had it third or fourth week, we can do this. It's a good timing, but that one way or another, all the proposals will be entered in, and people will be able to vote on which ones should be created. And we don't know yet. There's a post on DEN to give feedback to help us decide how many new layers to accept this time. For those that don't know, all of the past processes have been handled using energy. So, a scarce scoring, a scarce, it's not a token, but a scarce point system within DEN. So with the launch of lore, it'll be actually possible to do what is described fully in the white paper that we've been so far in the beta just testing up till now. But creating real layers and creating real lot. But this will be a very interesting month, January, for DEN. Before you make a proposal, please read through all the proposals before, rather than making a duplicate one. If there is something fairly close, you might, ping them and see if it's far enough apart to make the proposal, or if you want to just, add to their proposal and, go along with them. So timing, rules, everything else will be announced. We'll announce it on DEN. It'll probably also be announced by DEN on Twitter. Should be fun. So anyway, get ready for that. Get ready. It'll be a good time. You will need to make sure you claim your lore, you get your lore, you do whatever you need to do that. But otherwise, everything should be available to you. So that's all the updates. So we're going to come right back after this with our guests. All right, please welcome our guests. We have today Phil Abraham and Dr. Albert H. Carlson. Welcome to the show, guys. So Phil is Dragonchain's newest board member, founder of Cloudface Technologies, former supply chain executive at GM, and served as national executive of global logistics at Domino's. I think I got that right. Welcome back to the show, Phil. And also Dr. Al.
Thank you.
Albert H. Carlson, PhD in computer science, holds over 8 patents in polymorphic cipher engines, and is the chair of the Quantum Encryption Committee.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, okay, so let's start with Dr. Al. What is your background? How did you get involved with the technology that you're involved in, particularly crypto?
Wow, that I have a long background. It starts back when I turned 20. I was assigned by the U.S. Army to be an intelligence officer in tactical and strategic electronic warfare and cryptography. So I was trained in that, and I went to work at a number of different places. I taught at the U.S. Army Intelligence Center and School at Fort Devens for a little bit. I helped develop coursework, generally had a good time in the Army doing crypto. And then left the Army. I was injured and retired. And so I went back to work doing electrical and computer engineering, because my background was primarily at that time in electrical and computer engineering. And then I started doing cybersecurity, and left the industry to go and study at the University of Idaho, where I did cybersecurity for, believe it or not, railroads. And that got me into getting into a department of the computer science area at that school that was working in cryptography, and I proposed a polymorphic cryptography, and that's where I finished my doctorate in that area. I actually hold my background is in set theory and how set theory is used to break encryption, and from that I took that attack and started doing defensive cryptography, and left there, taught at a couple of universities, and then was offered a position at a company to do encryption, and that's where all this started.
That's excellent. Yeah, that's really impressive. Really, really interesting tech. Phil, how did you meet the doctor?
I'm so lucky that I met him because we're good friends now. But it started off. Dr. Al has this new company now, but his last company, they started to break out some of this phenomenal cybersecurity, and there were people in Washington, D.C. that would scratch their head and say, we don't understand all the mathematics and things. And so some of the guys at the last company that Dr. Al was at asked me to go explain it to them. And I said, well, I can only use common English on this one because, so I went to Washington, D.C. and I got in a room with these guys and I said, well, first off, you're never going to understand Dr. Al's mathematics unless you plan on being one of the top mathematicians in the world. So if that's not on your list of things to do, your next chance is to listen to me. So I said to him, picture taking a baseball and throwing it through a glass window, and that glass window represents somebody's email, and it gets broken up into thousands of little pieces of glass, and then you wrap 1 million keys or some crazy number around each piece of glass, and a hacker would have to hack all those keys, put all the glass together to read the email. And they go, oh, well, we can understand that. I said, okay, then. And so we all became friends at that point.
Did you run the analogy by Dr. Al first, or did you just guess?
No, I basically what I did was I did what I normally do. I panicked, and because I had these people in suits that were too serious looking, and I was confused because I was like, why would you even try to understand Dr. Al's mathematics? I recently read his dissertation, which is like 184 pages of stuff. And I got through the first 2 pages and started to feel kind of smart. Then I got to like page 4 and 5. I just said, this isn't going to work. Okay. So I just did what I know how to do, is communicate.
That's good.
So I took his stuff as best as I could get my brain around it and tried to make it understandable. And the good thing is then people go, oh,
okay.
They go, I want the compression, I want the camouflage now, and I want the polymorphic random number generator. And now people say, can you explain that to me? I said, you know what? It's over my pay grade. I forget that.
That's good. That's good. Okay. So, all right. So next I have down SolarWinds FireEye, right? So sensitive systems. I've not had actually even the time since that stuff came out to really look into what in particular the attack is, how they're what's working, anything else. So I actually don't have enough info to really delve in, but knowing what happened, is this worse than what is publicly known? Because it's kind of weird. It seems glossed over in the press. It doesn't seem there's a lot of depth. There's a lot of hidden info of who is actually attacked, when, and by whom. Could this have been prevented? Knowing what you know, Dr. Al, what do you think?
Well, I'm having the same problem trying to gather all that information, but I'm going to say that most of the time, I believe it can be prevented for the most part. The biggest problem people have is they don't recognize the role of patterns in data. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what usually allows somebody to come in the door and do bad things to you.
Right.
And
right.
Could it have been prevented? Sure. All this could be prevented. It's a lot of this has to do with people feeling safe with, they're told, oh, all data is safe. The answer is it's not.
Yeah.
Right. And the best way to do it is to break it up in these, we call these little things shards, like shards of glass that Phil was talking about. So that at most you can only get a little piece of information and not the whole picture. Right.
Yeah.
But in this case, I think, there was a lot of prevention that could have happened if people had been proactive instead of reactive.
Yeah. For the one thing I have heard, and I've heard this from 2 sources, so I assume some of it's true, is that some of the attacked parties were using some of the software in ways that inadvisable ways. It might have been, I don't know whether it was necessarily the intended use or not, but it was a bad use. That it was, once you have access to this admin panel, that's everything, right? It's you have access to everything, and therefore, if you're doing that all over the place, and there happens to be a 0 day, so
yeah, this is a problem with a single thing to hide the rest of the information. The one key concept.
Yes.
And once you get that one key, everything's out in the open.
Yep.
So what you really need to do, if you look at the work of Shannon back in the 40s, he's the father of modern cryptography, and really, really smart guy. I think he was at least as smart as Einstein, maybe even smarter for what he did, because he's the father of so many things. Information has this sort of characteristic about it. I mean, you can't create or destroy information. You can only change it in form. What you have to do is change it into so many forms that people can't keep up with you.
Right. Yep.
And what they do is they say, I have a secret key. Woohoo, I'm safe. And the answer is, you're safe only as long as your secret key doesn't get compromised.
Right. Yeah. And
that's
that's what, and it's like the soft underbelly is always the people, right? So it's, you can build the best system in the world, but you're going to have people using it, and how they use it will totally affect how secure it is. So it's always interesting. And that's why, by the way, I do think blockchain is so interesting, because you, like say at Disney, we would sometimes have a group come to us and think, okay, there might be something here. And they'd say, no, I don't have a technology problem. I have a people problem, right? It was either budgets, or it was something about getting people to follow the process. And it was really interesting, because we learned really quickly that those were the cases where we really should delve in, because that's where we could actually have some real productive value applied, where we can say, okay, we can incentivize your people to do this, right? And it turns everything on its head. It's really amazing. And we did a couple of times apply it to security, but I mean, most often it was something just literally, following a process of deploying code, right? Things as mundane as that you could really affect. So cool stuff. Okay. Phil, what sorts of tech could be applied to defend against an attack like this in, let's say, in supply chain? Because your world is supply chain, right? So what are your thoughts, and I guess in particular how you've considered Dr. Al's work and blockchain, right? Dragonchain blockchain.
My research shows that, and I always feel like I'm going upstream against people, but my research shows so much of the problems in hacking come through these supply chains and the extended reach of the supply chain, all those suppliers and vendors. I mean, at General Motors, they told me there's 1 million different places a hacker can come in. And the suppliers and vendors don't want to jump up and plug those holes. And the challenge is really getting brilliant cyber solutions like Dr. Al has that are easy to implement. That's what's going to save the supply chains, the easy button, because most cyber solutions are so difficult to implement that they don't really get implemented properly. So when you can get, the sharding of glass, you can get the splintering, and you can get a discussion going on around polymorphic random number generators, which is eliminating patterns and long strings of numbers. And you can camouflage, and if you want to use compression and make it easy, you can then protect supply chains and open that window and doorway to blockchain activity. The supply chains are going to blockchain. That's for sure. They're missing some of that real intense cybersecurity that Dr. Al's working on that's easy to use. So bringing it together now is what's going to save everything. It's a big issue, actually.
Nice. And okay,
I hope
so
that answers it.
No, I think so.
Without going on too long.
You're good. So Dr. Al, the polymorphic random number generator, that, in fact, that's at least the thing that I've seen most about what you've done. It's specifically has been cited as a potential protection against quantum compute attacks. And so, can you tell us, what are the risks, the real risks of quantum computing attacks, in particular, maybe on even cryptocurrencies? That would probably be the most interesting thing to people listening, but at the same time on any system, and how you can counter them.
Okay, think of a quantum environment. The real problems in a quantum environment come down to basically two different things. The first one is how much faster a quantum computer actually is, right? Quantum computers go very, very quickly compared to classical computers. However, it turns out that you have to run them with classical computers for various control reasons. So you have the speed. You have to kind of move things up. There are two different algorithms. There's Graves' algorithm, and there's also Shor's algorithm, and they work in two different areas, and they say two different things about the math. In modern cryptography and computing, we use what are called trapdoor functions a lot. And trapdoor functions are functions that are easy to compute forward if you have all the information, but they're very difficult to figure out backwards, right? But Shor's algorithm shows that it's possible for most of the stuff that's hard in the classical computing environment. It turns out to be really easy in the quantum environment. So you can't use those trapdoor functions anymore because they're basically what we call quantum candy. You go and they're sweet. The quantum computer just eats them up. So those kinds of basic algorithms are no longer useful in the quantum environment. I'm sorry, it was Grover's algorithm. Grover's algorithm says that the other ones, that we don't build on those kinds of mathematical trapdoor functions like semi-prime factorization, prime factorization, totient functions, things like that. They give rise to the public key infrastructure and encryption. Okay, and so those we're going to go away from. We're going to go away from probably the two key solutions, the asymmetric algorithms, and we're going to stay with the symmetric algorithms. But the symmetric algorithms, according to Grover's information, say basically that the symmetric algorithms, we're going to have to about double the key space. The interesting thing is in quantum environments, what you have is you have to make sure that you use those symmetric algorithms correctly, but the math doesn't change in the quantum environment. The math is the same. So information theory says that we can keep things hidden if we do things a little bit better. The good thing about polymorphic encryption is it multiplies the effective key space. It makes it much, much bigger for very, very little incremental effort.
Yes.
Which means that you can use the same algorithms, but you use them in a special way, and it makes them much, much stronger. Because if you're trying to put those shards in, get them in the right place and find the key, it makes a multiplier of something in the neighborhood of about 1,000 to 1,500 on the average. And you can make a key space that's very quickly approaches 10 to the 1,500th, which is a pretty big number. In just 3 or 4 changes of the encryption algorithm, and it happens very, very quickly, very, very quickly. So that allows us to be relevant in the quantum environment. Now, think about a blockchain. A blockchain has natural fragmentation of the data in each block. And it's small and it's limited. And that's just what we need for a shard to work with. So you can apply the polymorphic encryption into the shards or into the blocks and get much, much better encryption and safety very, very quickly for very, very little effort. And that's where we need to go. I mean, you know, and think of all the fun you have with the Merkle tree trying to put this together. That, you know, you're breaking up these blocks and you're putting them in different encryptions. And then you say you have to ask a question, and that is, what if somebody gets really, really lucky and breaks one block? Okay, you got a little bit of information. Does that help you break the rest of the blocks? No, because they're unrelated. And the polymorphic random number generator is a way that allows us to map pseudo-randomness into total randomness, okay? So think of it this way. Normally, there's a function that goes from step of one shard to the next, you would think, right? Now, if you had total randomness, there'd be no way to follow this. But if you get total randomness on one end of a computer and you do it to another end, you can't reliably create the same string. But with polymorphic random number generators, it allows you to be able to use determinism to be able to follow it if you're on either end. But the way it's implemented uses randomness in the middle with physically unclonable functions and other things to be able to map it into a totally random field. So it makes deterministic look random. So you get the advantages of both. And that's what the polymorphic random number generator was intended to do. And it gives a very, very long cycle so that you can design your random number generator to be longer than your messages, and it never, ever cycles. And if it doesn't cycle, you can't find patterns.
Nice.
And that's what we did there.
Nice. Very good. Very good. Okay. Very good. And I have some things I want to, in time, I want to talk to you about for how we're doing things and how we would want to plug into what you're doing. So that's coming, right? Phil, you've recently said, I think on Twitter, you should be using Den, by the way, but I think on Twitter, you said that Dragonchain and Cloudface have a digital fortress. You know, what do you mean? Tell the world what you mean by that in particular. I think there's a delay.
And by the way, I started the process of getting on the Den. Oh, yeah. Can you hear? I started to get on the Den, by the way. I'm not completely there, but I will be.
Yes,
and it'll be lit up like a Christmas tree when I'm done. But you know, what I did was watch this. I took, since I didn't want to go past like 11th grade math to get to where Dr. Al is, I took, you know, with my license to sell his stuff to, you know, we'll just say regular people, General Motors, stuff like this, okay? Well, when I started to talk about polymorphic random number generators and the camouflage and compression and things like that, as good as I was, I just couldn't get them to understand it. And so I decided to wrap Dr. Al's stuff up as the digital fortress. And then when I, for whatever reason, when I said digital fortress, everyone's like, oh, we get Dr. Al now. And I think in my head, no, you don't really got him yet. Okay. But the fact that customers say, God, I really like that digital fortress idea. So behind digital fortress, we try to do two things. We want to bring complex organizations, supply chain, hopefully, because I know it so well, or other organizations, and we want to bring them over to the blockchain and secure them big time with Dr. Al's stuff. That's our goal. And there's just not enough time in a day to explain all, you know, all this math stuff. So I call it Cloudface Digital Fortress, because sometimes a customer will only give me 40 minutes or something.
Right.
And if I talk about just some regular fill stuff, that might eat up 20 minutes of it. So that's kind of the thinking behind Cloudface Digital Fortress.
Nice. That's master marketing there. That's really good. Because it's hard. By the way, that was some of the stuff that, you know, we learned a lot about. And, you know, I'm not a master communicator, right? But that was probably the biggest issue. I still think the biggest issue with a lot of the tech that's out there, that there are applications that aren't even being considered because the people who should be considering them can't understand them because the tech press is all about number go up, right? That's all they talk about. Number go up. Oh, this is, and even if you talk about startup tech, it's not about SpaceX and the amazing tech. It's about, the valuations and, how well Tesla's doing and things like this. It's kind of crazy. And that's, at Disney, at least one of the angles that we took was that, and since, by the way, at Dragonchain as well, that if we talk about the capabilities instead of the use cases, instead of saying, oh, we can use it for this known use case, if we talk about the various, proof of time, the measurable proof that this event happened, things like that, it tends to spark the ideas that we would never know, or these issues that are out there that we can solve that we never knew about, that people will bring them to us. And all the way back at Disney, and even now, people will say, this might be stupid. This might be a stupid idea, but I think I could use it for this. And every time they're right. It's like anytime they think that an idea is stupid and bring it to us, it's always correct. It's always the exact place they should be using it. And it's really, really interesting. So that's the type of stuff we need. We need more help with wrapping it into 2 words, though, right? Because if we can put it into 2 words,
Yeah.
English. It's really powerful. But wow. Okay, so let's see here. Al, Dr. Al, I had a question about the polymorphic random number generator. You've already answered it. So I'm wondering, what are the inputs? How do you seed it? How does it know where to start? If it's using, and I think probably a very high level, of understanding, not in the details, but that you're using multiple algorithms and switching between them in a way, which is what you're talking about, the determinism. On the other side, you can figure out which one is next, so you can read the next block or the next shard.
Right.
So how do you decide that order? How what's the mechanism to seed whatever it is that decides that order?
Well, we use an interesting hybrid method to seed this. First of all, think of doing a handshake between the computers, right? That gives you an initial number, and what that initial number does is it selects a random number generator, right? And it selects a seed in there. And then we map that onto a physically unclonable function that's agreed upon between the 2 nodes, usually by taking some information from both nodes and combining them in a known way. And what that does is that points to an area in the physically unclonable functions, and you read part of that, and you use that as a seed and with the information to input and select the next seed. So you're running from seed to seed to seed. And what those seeds do is they replace, before there's enough time for an attacker to figure out what the sequence is. So you replace the random number generator and you replace the physically unclonable function tables. And so you have an evolving set of random information that you're picking from that was determined from the original physically unclonable functions in the handshake.
Yes, that's great. That's excellent.
Can I make a comment here to Jim there?
Yes.
Your brain hurts already? Just remember, I had to dream about this at night.
Yes, that stuff comes to you in dream. That's excellent. See, that's the best thing.
Yeah.
No, because I had wondered, because we have something that when I read that, and it was like I said, I think it came from Phil, but it was through our guy where I saw the synopsis basically of what this patent was, what this system was. And I'm interested in all these things. In fact, there was a proposal that no doubt was after you created this, and it was back in the big block, small block Bitcoin drama days, around probably, what was it, 2015, where someone proposed, and I believe, I'm not going to say who because I can't remember who it was precisely, but proposed to change the algorithm per block. And it is like that. So that was the first thing that popped up in my mind. It's like, oh, because I always thought that was brilliant. Right? It's like, oh, you you would never know if you were mining what the most optimal miner configuration would be for every block. You would say, oh, I'm going to optimize for this type of block, and the system will do well in competing when that type of block is wanted. But when a different type of block is wanted, you're going to have to use something else. And so that I thought was pretty brilliant. I don't think it ever got any legs, but I was always really interested in that. So this was interesting. And when I saw, and I wanted to ask you, and I was going to ask you offline, but about that input, how do you decide that? And if it's SSL handshake type pattern, right, or something similar, where it's the two machines talking to each other, sharing something that then they can independently come to the same conclusion, and therefore have that symmetric cipher or whatever it might be. That I wanted to ask you, and it might totally be not applicable, right? But we have a system that, and we've almost productized it. We've not released it as a product yet. We've had a few different groups use it as a contest system, and mostly it was a way to. This is very much like, say, what Phil does. Is like we realized, how do people understand this this tech? It's very abstract. It's very esoteric. It's very geeky. But money always is something that is like, I'm going to people will do the extra research or reading if there's an interesting angle that money's involved, right? So what we did is we said, okay, we have also demonstration. We have an interchain interop patent that captures interoperability between blockchains and traditional systems. A bunch of really, I think it's a holy grail patent. I was surprised that we were awarded this patent, right? But I'm always surprised. Wow, they actually understood it. They declared it novel. It's good. But this interchain patent lets us, as an example, take information from these public blockchains. And why public? Because you could do it from multiple, and you might even have a reason to do it from private blockchains. But with the public blockchains, you have, number one, the transparency. So anyone can independently validate that block came up at that time. It's deterministic after that, right? Once that's happened, it's happened. You might have forks, but the fork happened too. So it's still deterministic. And that it cannot be, at least not without a measurable large expenditure of resources, it cannot be anticipated, right? That it would cost you millions of dollars, which would be almost immediately lost to compromise the Bitcoin network, as an example, to facilitate getting the hash that you want for a particular block, so many blocks away, right? So if I say, okay, we're going to decide in 5 blocks, and we happen to also then use Bitcoin and Ethereum and Ethereum Classic and anything else combined. So we basically say, at this block height or after this period of time, the next block, Bitcoin and Ethereum combined will produce a hash, which is the seed, and for our thing, we do a very simple selection process based upon that hash, right? And so I had wondered, and this might be totally, you don't know anything about that, so it's probably stupid to ask you this live, but that was my thought. It's like, I should ask you if it would ever be of any interest to use it for somewhere in there to add to the random. It could be one of the other algorithms for that matter. It could be,
Yeah,
so.
I mean, there's things that you can do with this inside blocks. For instance, you can put random numbers inside blocks, and you have to have knowledge of so many sequential random numbers to be able to reconstruct the seed.
Right.
And yeah, that's quite doable.
Okay. Because that's one of the things. It's like, that's at least something in the future I want to talk to you about. And then the other side is to potentially either use your algorithm as an added security measure for businesses already using the chain, where they could, the other chains go through the normal process that's already in place, that's documented in the white paper.
Yeah.
if you added this, you know.
One of the things that we do that's interesting is something that Phil's talked about. It's called the data camouflage. And what we do is we actually damage the encrypted file, and we stick a damaged copy of the encrypted file in there. And if you don't have the right information to go in and take the damage out, you cannot recover the initial information.
Yeah.
And
wow.
and that's and we've got it going fast. Our fastest software implementation put an overhead of about 2 microseconds on it. And if you do it in hardware, you can do it in about 15 femtoseconds.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. That's amazing. Okay. Yeah. Cause that can be plugged right in, right? I mean, you would know, you'd be able to do that deterministically in a way that's just adding more space to whatever I have to try to brute force, right?
Yep.
Brilliant. Wow. What are your thoughts? This is out of nowhere, but I've never talked about this publicly, but and we've never had the time to think about building it, but port knocking, which is at least back when I knew more, when I was more into DevOps and security years ago, that was always considered kind of the breaking the rule of obscurity is not security, right? That it is opening up so much space that this, even though it's just obscurity, really enhances the security that you've already applied. What do you think about that with blockchain? Because I thought about, not only would you have the additional space, but you'd also have the cost that I could potentially make a very secure system very expensive to unlock by doing a very obscure sequence of events.
One of the interesting things is you do a reordering and you have to figure out what the reordering is. And you come up with an n factorial problem trying to reorder it on top of everything. So you have an n factorial, which for those of you who don't know what that means, it's a really, really, really big number, because 10 factorial is about 38 million different combinations. Now think about what would happen after 100 of these things were put in reorder, and the only way to do that was to have the information out of the polymorphic encryption to be able to reorder them in the right ways, because then you get bad data pointing to good data, and that really irritates the system. It's one of the things that I like to call offensive cryptography, mostly because it offends the hackers, and I like to attack the hack. I am so sick of having to defend. I like to go out and attack. And so that's one of the things that, could be done with this.
Offense is important, right?
Yeah.
Always important. Yep. You can't. Yeah. And one other element, and this wasn't even on the list of questions to ask about that. What are your thoughts on structure in security? Because you focus on crypto. You focus on the actual algorithmic angle to secure data. Dragonchains, and me specifically, if you know anything about when I design systems, most everything that I do is very structural, like from the base, that there's more value to data. It's not, maybe it's not, data information. Maybe it's not information, but the simple structural patterns that you build into how a system is architected really affect the security. That was the basis of how I knew. I'm not a cryptographer, right? I wouldn't, like Phil, I wouldn't be able to read your math, right? I can tend to understand it when we get into analogies and things, but what we did was very specifically separate the data. So the very fact that we said it's a hybrid system, meaning your business has full control of the data just like it does today. However, it's on a chain, and that the proof is what is decentralized. So we don't want, you can decentralize your data. Obviously, there are so many ways to do that, but our real angle for scaling real business adoption is all based upon the fact that we're able to separate your business data from its proof, right? So that you can, you can keep all your data private. And when you need to prove it, then you can expose it. And in exposing it, anybody can read the chain all the way up to Bitcoin and see, oh, this really did happen. And there's about $10 billion worth of proof behind it now a few years later, right? So anyway.
Yeah, see, you and I are going to have fun here because patterns are bad.
Yes.
Okay. In cryptography, patterns are real bad. But what you have to do to randomize, you have to do something we call deterministic randomness, right?
Yeah.
So that it doesn't look like there's a pattern there, but the pattern is so obscured that you can't find it, right? And when you do that, you can really, really help the security and at the same time patterns. Now, one of the things that we did a few years ago was we broke AES with CBC. Okay, did a talk on that at DEF CON, I think it was DEF CON 23. And it was interesting that the math went in there. We actually broke the system that did the randomness. And we were able to get so much information back from the random algorithm that we could actually return the entire message. And that's when we started thinking that deterministic randomness had to be structurally in there. But part of the thing that helped us break it was the regular structure of AES with CBC. And so you have to be very careful with those patterns because patterns, bad. No-nos, patterns. So, yeah.
All right. Very good. Okay.
Offline, but it's fun.
Yeah, no, this fits really well because I think I noticed some of the structure in what I had read about what you've done, and anyway, I'm really interested. So we're gonna be doing some cool stuff with Phil in the middle, pretty much. So Phil's the one that brought us together. So he's been doing some. He's gotten a lot of fans recently. I know that. So so Phil. Where can people follow you? Where's the best place to watch what you're doing and what's coming?
Well, I don't even know how to answer that question anymore. I don't know. I can't answer that right now. I'm
Twitter or LinkedIn?
Well, here's my problem. Ever since I started getting involved with Dragonchain, my life has gotten like 1,000 times much more fun and exciting. Okay. Yeah. And so on LinkedIn, I'm way up there, thousands of followers. I put a message out there. Everyone's all over me. I got it, right? But then because of Dragonchain, I got involved in Twitter because I normally didn't mess around with Twitter. And I got all my Twitter Dragon friends out there.
Okay, that's good. It's good.
And then so, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll work out a better answer.
Good. Twitter is less toxic during a bull run period than a bear run. So just so you know, always maybe lock your account when the bear comes to Bitcoin. Just lock your account and just step away for a while because it's not as bad as Reddit. Reddit's the worst, but it's still pretty toxic usually. Very very provincial and tribal. Sometimes it's good because their communities are proud of their projects, but sometimes it's bad because they don't really venture to learn about other things. So anyway, apologies in advance for what you might encounter on crypto Twitter. Dr. Al, where can people follow you? What you're doing?
Well, most of my research is ResearchGate. Actually, if you go to ResearchGate and look for Albert H. Carlson, that'll get you the papers and some of the work that we're doing. Most of my work is being done at the university level now with a couple of different universities, and right now we're into what's called constrained AES and constrained polymorphic systems. I'm also doing work in neural networks and how to measure neural networks and their effectiveness using hardware circuitry. Believe it or not, there's a great paper up there that tells you how to predict what level of accuracy and how many training cycles you need. And we're also doing work on generative adversarial networks and also polymorphic number generation.
Nice.
So that's the best place to get me, or you can get me through Phil, because I try and hide. I got so much research going on.
Yeah, that's always good. Yeah, we don't want to distract you more than anything. So that's good. That's good stuff. All right. Well, this was great. Thanks. That was some really good, at least for me, discussions. I'm really happy with that conversation. So thanks so much for coming on. We'll have you back, right? Hopefully, and we'll definitely be talking soon. So I want to learn a lot more about what you've done already and what you're working on. So, so for everybody else, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays. I think I forgot to say Merry Christmas last week. Watch us again next Tuesday, every Tuesday, same time until I get the COVID. I'm joking. And follow us, Real Denizens, Dragonchain Gang, and Jojo Row for all the best content and to keep track of what's coming on and coming up. Like, comment, subscribe, all the things you're supposed to do on YouTube and Periscope and Twitter and everywhere else, wherever you're watching. So thanks a bunch. Talk to y'all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you guys can stick around.